Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. It's been a few weeks since we did a video, so I thought I'd do another video on Elvis because it is 45 years today since he passed away, unfortunately, which means that he's been dead for 3 years more than he was actually alive, which is very sad. But his legacy still lives on, it still breathes strongly, and his music will always live on and influence many people and be loved by many people like me. Now I've already tried this video once. Hopefully my phone doesn't mess up. So let's try this again. So in this video, I am going to just talk about albums that sort of helped me get into Elvis. Just because, like there was a new Elvis film out, which was a massive film. Really good for like reintroducing Elvis to the mainstream culture and also trying to get new fans into Elvis's music. So maybe somebody could watch this and think, oh, I might check these albums out. But I mean, some of these are a bit less obvious choices than Elvis fans may think. These are just sort of albums that I listened to which helped me get into him. And just albums that I have very fond memories of listening to when I was getting into Elvis and discovering him. So the first album, I don't know if it's cheating, it's a compilation. It's not a studio album or a soundtrack album that Elvis recorded in his lifetime. But it's the 30 number one hits which came out in 2002, and this album has actually been gaining popularity again since the Elvis film came out, which was really great to see because it's been streamed a lot more. It's been climbing up the album charts in the UK at least because it's been streamed more, which is great to see. I can definitely see that Elvis's monthly listeners on Spotify have increased by quite a few million since the film came out, which is good. It shows that the film has done its job. But this was a really important album for me getting into Elvis. I got this before I properly discovered Elvis, before I properly started trying to like discover his music and his more deeper cuts. But like I already knew a lot of these songs when I picked this album up. I picked it up back in like 2019. It's just like wall-to-wall fantastic songs. These are all like singles that charted to #1 in the UK or the US, or some chart in the US, and it goes in chronological order from 1956 to his death. And then it also includes a bonus track, which is Little Less Conversation, the remix, which came out in the early 2000s, which is probably the first Elvis song I ever knew, just because it was in so many films and so many adverts when I was young, because I was born in the early 2000s, so it's pretty much played all around when I was young. But all these songs are fantastic. They're all famous songs. You got some of the best-selling songs of all time here, like It's Now or Never, and Can't Help Falling in Love. All these fantastic songs. They're all well known. You'll know, like, people will know so many of these songs. I mean, this is what anybody who's trying to get into Elvis should start with. I mean, it's just an essential compilation album, and it really goes to show how important he was and how successful he was as an artist. 30 #1 hits is quite impressive, I must say. Not all of them are technically #1 hits, but the fact that there's 30 songs on that album, which beats the Beatles' 27 #1 hits. I mean, there was songs that weren't included on the Beatles' #1 album, but it's still similar caliber of, magnitude of how amazing that achievement is. So on to the next one. This is probably the most obvious one, which is his debut album from 1956, the iconic album with the pink and green text, the iconic image of him singing on the cover. It's just definitely his most influential album, definitely his most important album, and his most recognised album that he recorded in his lifetime, because it's just sort of the birth of rock and roll, really. It's the sort of rock and roll fully coming into the mainstream, thanks to Elvis, bringing it to like lots of people through the RCA label, and it's just such an important album. It was very influential. I mean, the Clash redid the cover for London Calling and used like an image of one of the band members smashing the guitar, but it had the same designed cover, and it just went on to influence so many people, so many artists that followed in the 60s and the 70s. It's really where it all started when it comes to like the musical cultural revolution of the mid-20th century. It's sort of like that moment where it all just explodes. And then it just sort of got the ball rolling for the evolution of rock music, which, it just started from here basically. And when I was getting into this, when I started listening to the album for the first time, I just remember having really fond memories. I mean, I'd listened to it in the first lockdown of 2020. In the UK, it was really nice weather, so I just remember, it'd been really nice weather just getting into all these Elvis albums, and this was definitely one that I remember a lot, just listening to. There's just some great songs on here. Blue Suede Shoes, Just Because, Trying to Get to You, Money Honey, some great songs on here. And it's just like a fusion of like rock and roll, blues, rhythm and blues and country, and Elvis just blending all these styles into one like hybrid that is his own style. And he's also just sort of developing as a singer. He sings his first ballads on here, as well as like it features some Sun recordings as well. So yeah, it's just a very important album. Definitely one that you should listen to at some point. Now the next one is one that might not be what most people would think is an essential Elvis album to listen to. But I definitely remember having fond memories of listening to this one. This one just sort of caught my attention a lot because it just had so many great songs, and it's only like a 20-minute album. And I remember I had to wait quite a while to try and find a US version of this album, because the US version has the better track listing for me, just because it's what the version is on Spotify, but also because it has better songs, and it doesn't remove songs to put other songs that are already on other albums. It's A Date with Elvis. I said it before I even showed the cover, but yeah, A Date with Elvis. I love that cover of him in the army in that car. So yeah, this was one of my favourite albums when I was first getting into Elvis. I still want to try find a mono version. It doesn't necessarily have to be like an original USA version. I just want like a mono version which has the original track listing. But yeah, I mean, I just remember listening to these songs and just like really loving them, like Blue Moon of Kentucky, Young and Beautiful. That is a great song, Young and Beautiful. And You're So Square, Baby, I Don't Care. That's just a brilliant song, that. Baby Let's Play House, fantastic song. Good Rockin' Tonight, I Forgot to Remember to Forget. It's a compilation which blends some recordings and a few various B-sides or singles, I think, that Elvis recorded in the 50s, and also some movie soundtrack songs, like songs from Jailhouse Rock and Love Me Tender. And it's like one of 3 albums that were released while Elvis was in the army, just to like keep fans occupied while he was in the army. But that is a great 50s album from Elvis, one of my favourite 50s albums from Elvis, and one of my favourite Elvis albums overall. And then this next one is probably my favourite Elvis album of all time. It's just a fantastic album. I mean, I remember listening to this one night after we sat outside in the garden with the fire on in the back garden, and then I just listened to this late at night, and then I was listening to the first song. I was like, wow, this is great. It's a really fantastic song. From Elvis in Memphis, a critically acclaimed album, one of his most loved albums among fans. Definitely my favourite album, studio album by Elvis. He's just he's in top form here. The song selection, his passion in like arranging the songs, and his singing is fantastic. He's right on. He's done the comeback special. It was a massive success. He's taken that in his stride, and he's said to the Colonel, "Look, I don't care what you say. This is I'm gonna do this how I want to do it." And he just selected the songs himself. And, this is just like, every time Elvis had the passion in his records and fully put the passion into it, you could tell. I mean, it paid off, and you could tell in the music and like the quality of the album. And also the production on this album is fantastic. There's just so many great songs on it. Like when I first listened to Wearing That Love Don't Look, I was like, that is a great opening song. Fantastic song. It's such a catchy song. I really love that song. Only the Strong Survive is a great song. I'll Hold You in My Heart Till I Can Hold You in My Arms is a fantastic vocal performance. And then you've got songs on the second side like Power of My Love, After Loving You, Gentle on My Mind, and Any Day Now. Probably my favourite song on the album is Any Day Now. Such a triumphant sounding song. And In the Ghetto, of course, the classic In the Ghetto. So this is definitely the most essential studio album, I would say, that anybody can check out from Elvis. There are albums that are pretty much just as good as this, but this is just a fantastic album, and this is definitely this is like one of the studio albums that helped me get into Elvis, and especially like, because Elvis is most famous for his 50s output, just because, you know, he was like the teenage idol of the 50s, you know, that's when he was most iconic. So this sort of helped me get into some of Elvis's later stuff when he was more mature as an artist, after he'd done all of his films. Because to the regular music fan who doesn't know much about Elvis, like, they'll hear his hits and like, oh yeah, It's Now or Never, Can't Help Falling in Love, Suspicious Minds. You know, nobody really knows that he had like a massive gap between his 50s and early 60s stuff and when he came back after all the movies and did songs like Suspicious Minds. So like, that is an album to help you get into Elvis's later stuff after he sort of did the movies. And it's quite a long while after all of his 50s and early 60s stuff. And this one is a soundtrack album, one of my favourite Elvis soundtrack albums. And I think it was actually the first Elvis album that I listened to in full, Blue Hawaii. I've listened to it, one, because it had the song Can't Help Falling in Love on it, which is one of my all-time favourite songs. You know, it's just a fantastic, beautiful song. Everybody knows that song. And also because I was thinking, you know, it's Hawaiian music. When I was younger, I used to grow up with SpongeBob SquarePants. That was you know, it's still my, like, one of my favourite TV shows. I mean, it's just, I loved that show when I was a kid. And it had lots of Hawaiian music, like, just in the background while, you know, the episodes were playing. And because it was Hawaiian music, I thought, you know, this might be up my street, because I dig Hawaiian music. It makes me feel nostalgic because of that reason, because it reminds me of SpongeBob and stuff like that. And it's, you know, it's just a weird thing. That's why I listened to this album. And, you know, Elvis did do another Hawaiian album, which was Paradise Hawaiian Style, which is nowhere near as good as this. But like, for a soundtrack album, for like a cheesy movie, this is a great album. It's got some great songs on it. It's got some really good traditional Hawaiian songs as well, like Blue Hawaii. What's the song called? Oh yeah, Aloha O. You know, there's some great ballads on the second side as well, like Hawaiian Wedding Song, Kuipo, No More. That's a fantastic song. And then you've also got Can't Help Falling in Love, which is just a massive song. So yeah, one of Elvis's best soundtracks, probably the best, most famous soundtrack Elvis did, maybe besides Jailhouse Rock. But when it comes to 60s soundtrack albums, this is definitely the best one for me, without a doubt. But yeah, this is a great album. As a 60s soundtrack album, this is a really great album. And, you know, that's where sort of Elvis's movie output in terms of songs probably peaked. And it's also where the downfall probably began, because the movies just started getting more and more frequent for Elvis. But yeah, those are my 5 albums that got me into Elvis. 5 albums that I think people should check out, just to sort of give you a variety of what his career was like, I guess, especially the #1 hits. You know, they're just essential to listen to. But yeah, this video is just in remembrance of Elvis. What a great artist he was, a musical icon, an icon of the 20th century, not just as a musician, but as a figurehead in general, as a person, as a human being. You know, a fantastic performer, a natural born performer with loads of talent, loads of charisma. He deserves all the praise and, you know, success that he got, and people should carry on listening to his music for generations to come, and I'm sure they will. And he's one of the most important artists of all time, and that's pretty much all I can say about him. So thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.